Hi, and welcome to another one of my classic blues licks guitar lessons. Today we're going to look at the playing of Lowell Fulson. Lowell Fulson is one of the greater and maybe more underrated electric blues guitar players from the 50s and the 60s. Lowell Fulson, I'm going to show you a lot of his lead ideas, but I'm also going to show you some rhythm stuff. Some of it taken from his guitar playing, also some of it taken from the playing of his horn players. And something I've learned as a guitar player is when you study the old blues and swing and things like that, you can, and even jazz, you can learn a lot of great guitar stuff by listening to the horn players. You can adapt a lot of it. And I'm going to show you some examples of how you can adapt some of the horn playing on Lowell Fulson's recordings to guitar. Starting out, Lowell Fulson's lead playing. A lot of it was in the basic blues box. So it's pretty simple what he's doing. And if you're new to this, or if you haven't watched my lesson on the blues box, then what I mean by the first position blues box is basically the scales played around the first position bar chord. So a lot of Lowell's playing is in the key of G. So there's a first position bar chord in the key of G. And then the blues box is just that area around that chord where you can play. If you see my video, I show you the exact scales, but it's just in that range. Very rarely does he go down to the second position blues box or the third or anywhere higher on the neck. He does sometimes. But predominantly his playing is right around here. Right in there. So I'm just going to show you some of the ideas that he uses while playing in that vicinity. So in the key of G, I think one of the signature ideas of his playing, at least what I've picked up from studying it, is his use of the bending on the sixth note. And so if you're playing in the key of G, you're talking about the 5th fret of the 2nd string. And on a lot of his solos and fills, he's messing with that bend. And he does it in a lot of different ways. Simplest way is just to bend it. Then play some other notes, then come back. So you'll hear that a lot in his playing. Sometimes he'll do a hammer-on, pull-off type thing. Something like that. Also, a lot of times he throws in these hops, or what I call hops, with his playing. And this is another idea which I've explained in other videos, T-Bone Walker videos, and some basic blues stuff. But a couple different ways you can play those. The simplest way is to anchor your first finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and then take your 2nd and 3rd fingers on the 4th and 5th frets of the 3rd string, and just bend them up, and keep that first finger anchored. Don't let that move. And you can choke it off with your right hand, with your palm on your right hand. So you hear a lot of times he'll combine those two ideas, the bend together. So that's another idea you hear a lot in his playing, are those hops. That's pretty simple. Another thing, if I had to characterize the playing of Lowell Fulson, would be single string runs. And a lot of times he does these runs on the single string, something like this. So all I'm doing is using that basic blues box from the 6th fret. You can do this in a lot of different ways. That's not like an exact lick. Or he'll play something like this. And that is this kind of you hear this run in a lot of his playing, going from the 3rd fret of the 2nd string to the 6th fret to the 3rd fret of the 1st string to the 5th fret. As he's getting to the 5 chord of the song. Brings me to another idea in his playing, are the double stops. And when you listen to Lowell Fulson's playing, you'll hear him use a lot of these. Something like that. Just simple double string things. The best example, or one example, comes from a tune called You're Gonna Miss Me, or I'm sorry, Too Many Drivers at the Wheel, where he does something like this. Something like this. So that is a real simple thing. I've just got my first finger on the 2nd and 3rd strings at the 3rd fret. And I'm walking into it on the 5th fret of the 4th string. To the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, 5th fret of the 3rd string, 3rd fret. Once again, right in that blues box. I can throw in a second double stop down here at the 2nd and 3rd fret strings on the 5th fret. A lot of times I'll just let it hang. Something like that. One of my favorite examples of him using the double stops is in the instrumental tune called Rollin' Blues. And he plays this really cool lick. It's part of the instrumental, but you could use this as part of a solo or something else too. I've done it before. Let me play this through for you. And all he's doing is walking into that on the 5th fret of the 5th string, 3rd fret of the 4th string, 5th fret of the 4th string. You see that blues box again, just right in there. So instead of, he's just doing the same lick. Now the tricky part is throwing in the bass note. And what I'm doing is getting the 3rd fret of the 6th string with my thumb. Or you could do one of your fingers. I just use the thumb because I play a lot of acoustic stuff too. I'm used to using the thumb there. And this time the double stop is on the 3rd and 4th strings at the 3rd fret. Then I'm bouncing back and forth between that double stop and the 5th fret of the 5th string. So a lot of the double stop playing in Lowell Fulson's playing, that gives it, that's part of his sound, is his use of those. And I'll show you some more ways to use those in some turnarounds a little bit later in the lesson. So that's another idea. The final idea with his playing is the use of the bass notes. And a lot of times you'll hear him play the solo. And he'll go to the bass notes. And what he's doing a lot of times is just going again in that blues box between the 5th fret and the 3rd fret on the 4th and 5th strings. And he does that in a lot of different ways. There's one tune where he plays it real fast. And so you could play a solo. But he's using the bass notes. He also uses the bass notes to lead into the treble notes, which is kind of a cool technique. So he'll do something like this. So when he's playing a solo, instead of just, he'll lead into it with some bass notes. And that's just again, in the blues box. Just climbing up that blues box. So I'm starting on that lick from the 5th fret of the 5th string, 3rd fret of the 4th string, 5th fret of the 4th string, 3rd fret of the 3rd string, and then that 4th fret of the 3rd string. So the whole lick. You can think up a lot of different ways to use that, but he's starting in the bass notes, kind of building up on the treble strings, which is another idea that you hear in a lot of his playing. Now, I'm not showing you any solos or anything note for note, but what I'm showing you here are some of the different licks and ideas that you'll hear in Lowell Fulson's playing that make it sound the way it does. So you've got the double stop. You've got the 6-note bends. You've got the hops. And what else do we have? The bass notes. And those are all ideas that you'll hear in Lowell Fulson's playing. And they're all played right in the blues box. Simple. You notice I haven't gone up the neck at all. And you know, it's simple, but it sounds great, and that's one of the things that really characterizes Lowell Fulson's playing, is it's simple, but it's so tasteful and fluid, and it just sounds fantastic. Now, the next part of the lesson, we're going to take a look at some of the other aspects of his playing, especially introductions to songs, chord use, horn lines, things like that.